Shabbat Shalom. For those of you joining us here in person at Adathan Emmanuel in Mount Laurel, and those who are joining us through the blessing of technology, and if you feel comfortable, say Shabbat Shalom and share where it is you're joining us today. We are going to, for those who have not yet put on our talitot, to turn to page 289 in the brackets to put on talitot together. As I wrap myself in the talit, I fulfill the mitzvah of my Creator. Bless Adonai, O my soul, Adonai, my God, how great you are. You are robed in glory and majesty, wrapping yourself in light as in a garment, spreading forth the heavens like a curtain. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehitatef bat tzitzit. And we'll just look right across the page at 288 as we sing Moda Ani, giving thanks to God for being awake this morning and with our soul returned to us. Moda Ani lifanecha melech chai v'kayam shehechezarta binishmati bechemla bechemla rabbi munatecha rabbi munatecha. On page 290. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. Va'ani berov chastecha avo veitecha eshtachave el heichal kodshecha be'yiratecha. We continue on page 292. Page 292. Would you like to read, Bruce? Thank you.
The soul you have given me, O God, is pure. You created it, you formed it, and breathed it into me, and within me you sustain it. So long as I have breath, therefore, I will give thanks to you, my God, and the God of all ages, source of all being, loving guide of every human spirit.
Baruch atah Adonai, asher biado nefesh kol chai, v'ruach kol b'sar ish. And before we recite our Nisim B'chol Yom, I invite those who are here, or also those joining through the blessing of technology, to share something for which we are grateful today. Maybe something good that happened last week, and we shouldn't take it for granted. Yes? To have 4 great grandchildren, I mean, we welcome you back. 2 in the month of January, and so that's wonderful. Welcome back, and Mazel Tov on all those, that legacy. Yes. Working with a client, a youth who's now reunified after 3 years with her family. Very nice. The 49th anniversary of the proposal. Happy anniversary. And she said yes, and she's right there. This past week, I was able to participate in the CCAR, the Central Conference of American Rabbis Convention. That's the Reform Rabbis, although there are others who are not Reform, but that's the rabbis' affiliation. We had a convention in faraway Philadelphia. I was there all week and got to see colleagues again and had I think this was a very meaningful conference, sort of acknowledging where many rabbis are after, October 7th. And even more meaningful was there were over a dozen Israeli Reform rabbis who were there, and I feel like it was a win-win. Like they got to be out of Israel and see the number of colleagues who support them, and we got to benefit from their presence in sharing poetry and prayers and song and conversation. So I'm grateful for especially that this week. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasek bibina lehavchin bein yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten la ya'ef koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hama'avir sheina meinai utnuma me'af apai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tselem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani bat chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. On page 298, if the person who has the microphone next.
These are the things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world. While the principle remains in the world to come, they are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted to prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah compasses them all.
And we continue on page 303. Ashrei yoshvei veitecha, od yehalelucha selah. Ashrei ha'am shekacha lo, Ashrei ha'am she'Adonai le'ohav. Tilad leDavid, aromimcha lo'ai ha'melech, v'avarcha shimcha le'olam va'ed. B'chol yom avarchaka, v'alela shimcha le'olam va'ed. Gadol Adonai umhulav me'od, v'ligdulato ein cheker. Dor ledor yishabach ma'asecha, ugvurotecha yagidu. Hadar kevod hodecha, v'divrei niflotecha asicha. Ve'ezuz norotecha yomeru, ugdulatcha asaprena. Zecher rav tuvcha yabiu, v'tzidchacha yiranenu. Chanun v'rachum Adonai, erech apayim ugdol chesed. Tov Adonai lakol, v'rachamav al kol ma'asav. Yoduch Adonai kol ma'asecha, v'chasidecha yevarchucha. Kevod malchutcha yomeru, ugvuratcha yidaberu. Lehodia livnei ha'adam gevurotav, uchvod hadar malchuto. Malchutcha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha bechol dor vador. Somech Adonai lechol hanoflim, v'zokef lechol hakfufim. Einei chol elecha yisaberu, v'atanoten lahem et ochlam b'ito. Poteach yet yadecha, umaspia lechol chai ratzon. Tzadik Adonai b'chol derachav, v'chasid b'chol ma'asav. Karov Adonai lechol korav, lechol asher yikra'u ve'emet. Ritzon yireav yaseh, ve'et shavatam yishma v'yoshiem. Shomer Adonai et kol ohavav, ve'et kol harashaim yashmi. Tilat Adonai yidaber pi, vivarek kol basar shem kodsho le'olam va'ed. Va'anachnu nivarech ya, me'ata v'ad olam, hallelujah. We continue on page 312. 312. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, v'amad yivrach yirutei v'yamlik malchutei, Bechayechon uvyomechon uchaye dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman karib v'imeru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach L'olam ulomei almaya yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'richu leilam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata Tamiram bi'alma v'imeru amen. As we're able, we rise in body or spirit for Baruch Hu. Ya la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la ya la la la. Ya la 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 la, ya la la ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Ya la 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 la, ya la la ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chokhma asita mala haaretz kinyanecha. Tit barach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, ve'al ma'orei or she'asita yifa'arucha zela. Or chadash al Zion ta'ir v'nizkechu lanu mehera leoro Baruch atah Adonai yotzer hameorot. Continuing on page 318, 318. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. May be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'otecha v'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lektecha v'aderech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'chtavtam Amezuzot beitecha uvisha'arecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim lelohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim Liot lachem lelohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. Page 321, if the person who has the microphone next could read that.
Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come. The song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more. The song of a world redeemed, the song of peace.
On page 322. Yam bye bye bim bim bam, yabba bye bye bim bam, yam bye bye bim bim bam, yabba bye bye bim bam, ay 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 ay, yabba bye bye bim bam, ay 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 ay, yabba bye bye bim bam. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi kamocha nedar bakodesh, Nora tehilo, O sefele, Nora tehilo, O sefele, Shira chadasha, shibahu geulim, Shira chadasha, shibahu geulim, Lishimcha, Lishimcha, al svat hayam, Lishimcha, Lishimcha, al svat hayam, Yachad kulam hodu, 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 v'himlichu ve'amru, Adonai imloch leolam ba'ed, Adonai imloch leolam ba'ed, Yambai bai bim bim bai, Yabai bai bim bam, Yambai bai bim bim bam, Yabai bai bim bam, Ay 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 ay, Yabai bai bim bam, Ay 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 ay, Yabai bai bim bam. Zur Yisrael, Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, Ufdechinu mecha, Yehuda ve'Yisrael. Go aleinu Adonai Tzavahot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. As we're able, we rise in body and spirit for tefillah on page 323. Adonai sifatai tivta ufiyagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chastei Avovim Ahot, Umevi Gula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah Rab Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach Umorid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech noflim verofech olim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato, lishenei afar, michamocha ba'al gevurot, umido melach, melech meimit umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'neman atah l'hachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye hakol. Yai la lai lai lai, ya la lai lai, ya la lai. Yai la lai lai lai, lai lai lai, nikadesh et shimcha ba'olam, kishem shemakdishim oto bishmei marom, kakatuv al yad niviecha, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוכו הארץ, כבודו, אדיר אדירנו, אדוני אדוננו, מדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, הוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. On page 329 at the bottom of the page, whoever has the microphone next.
329.
329 at the bottom,
Thank you.
the meaning.
The meaning of Shabbat is to celebrate time rather than space. 6 days a week, we live under the tyranny of things of space. On Shabbat, we try to become attuned to holiness in time. It is a day on which we are called upon to share what is eternal in time, to turn from the results of creation to the mystery of creation, from the world of creation to the creation of the world.
Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat. We continue at the bottom of page 332. Page 332.
For expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations.
Modim anachnu lach.
For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons,
Modim anachnu lach.
for the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements,
Modim anachnu lach.
for human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression,
Modim anachnu lach.
for high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared,
Modim anachnu lach.
for all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom,
Modim anachnu lach.
for human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose.
Modim anachnu lach.
We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds.
Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulechana elehodot. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Chen v'chesed, chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Chen v'chesed, chen v'chesed v'rachamim, v'rachamim. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amecha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. We continue our prayer silently, whether we are led by the words on the pages of our Siddur through page 337 in the brackets, or perhaps reflecting on other prayers throughout the prayer book, or those meditations and thoughts in our hearts. Adonai tzuri v'goali, Ose shalom v'imromav, Uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imeru. Amen. We continue in our service now with Seder Kriyat Torah, so we turn in our prayer books to page 364 in the brackets, As we're able, we rise in body and spirit. Larry. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah. Udevar Adonai mirushalayim. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadlul Adonai iti, Uneromemo Shemo Yachdav. Lecha Adonai Hagedula v'Hagevura v'Hatiferet v'Hanetzach v'Hahod Ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz Ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz Lecha Adonai hamamlacha V'yamid na'aseh lechol erosh. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim ha'olam omed. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, ha'olam omed. Our Torah portion this Shabbat is called Pekudei. It is the very last Torah portion in the book of Exodus, in the book of Shemot. And so I like sometimes to be able to read from the very end of the Torah Torah portions and the book, so that we can say at the end the Chazak, Chazak, v'nit Chazek together, meaning be strong, and let us strengthen one another. And if you want to follow along in your Chumash, I will be reading from Exodus chapter 40, verse 34 and following. And you can find that on page 687 in the Plowed Chumash. So it's Exodus chapter 40, verse 34 and following. And is there someone for whom it would be, Michael, you want to come up for an aliyah? Okay. You know it's your bar mitzvah when you do that. I learned that the bar mitzvah is not necessarily reading from Torah. The bar mitzvah is having the aliyah. But I think you've done this before too. Yeah, okay. So wait, but your Hebrew name, you have to remind me. I'll show you right here.
Levi Yisrael.
Okay. Na la'amod Levi Yisrael ben Avraham v'Sara levarech ala Torah.
Baruch Adonai Barak.
Baruch Adonai Barak le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barak le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu el Torato. Baruch atah Adonai neten Torah.
Amen. Vayichas ha'anan et ohel moed uchvod Adonai malei et hamishkan v'lo yachol Moshe lavo el ohel moed ki shachan alav ha'anan uchvod Adonai malei et
hamishkan. Uvhe'alot ha'anan me'al hamishkan yis'u b'nei Yisrael b'chol masehem, v'im lo ye'aleh ha'anan v'lo yis'u ad yom he'aloto, ki anan Adonai al hamishkan yomam, ve'esh tiyeh laila bo, le'enei chol beit Yisrael b'chol masehem. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu et Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'kochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We turn our thoughts and prayers now to those who are in need of healing. So if you're joining us through the blessing of technology and you're thinking of someone who is in need of healing, I invite you to add their names to the chat at this time. And we turn in our prayer books to page 371 in the brackets as I share with you the following people in our extended Adith Emmanuel family to whom we send our blessings of healing, whether it is a healing of the mind or body or spirit. Andrea DiCiccio, Helen Kaminsky, Sarah Seidman, David Aguilar, Eliza Wargo, Audrey Pomerantz, Libby Barsky, Orly Boudet, Cynthia Rosenberg, Jill Hollander, Carol Levine, Judy Winogren, Bob Epifano, Marion Portnoy, Malcolm Fletcher, Ellen Bertuglia, Goldie Schultz, Mindy Fisher, Kayla Chana Bat Adan Lebu Masalea, Marlene Gratchner, Sarah Gardner, Cindy DeRicio, Harry Greenberg, Nick Baud, Deb Nielsen, Moshe Ben Elizabeth Theodore, Rosalie Middleman, Jennifer Ness, George Goldstein, Harriet Eisner, Carla Teisch, Linda Drachman, Chaim Ben David, Eileen Davison, Craig Davison, Hugh Morton, Art Bond, Roberta Levine, Jordan Steinberg, Lisa Galda, Ed Crosby, Myra Kaplan, Jeff Schaefer, Louis Alahut, Carol Schaefer, Mary Mednitsky, Jocelyn Jackson, Jen Jones, Michael Infanti, Gary Garnick, Rick Ulrich, Ileana Cohn, and others whose names we should add at this time. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholim. Mi shebeirach avoteinu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi shebeirach imotenu Mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing. with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. As we're able, we rise now as we lift and dress Torah. And you will be able to see, I love when you'll be able to see those 4 spaces that ends the book of Exodus and begins the book of Leviticus. Vezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la la, ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Vezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. May be seated. As we turn now to words of Haftarah, we turn in our Torah commentary to page 728. The Haftarah for Pekudei comes from the book of 1 Kings, chapter 7, verse 51 and following, page 728 in the Chumash, and we continue with the blessings on page 372 in the Siddur. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai Abocher Batorah Uv'Moshe Avdo Uv'Yisrael Amo Uv'Invi'ei Ha'emet V'Tzedek. And where's the microphone?
When all the work that King Solomon had done in the house of the Lord was completed, Solomon brought in the sacred donations of his father David, the silver, the gold, and the vessels, and deposited them in the treasury of the house of the Lord. Then Solomon convoked the elders of Israel, all the heads of the tribes and the ancestral chieftains of the Israelites, before King Solomon in Jerusalem, to bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord from the city of David, that is Zion. All the men of Israel gathered before King Solomon at the feast in the month of Enthanim, that is the 7th month. When all the elders of Israel had come, the priests lifted the ark and carried up the ark of the Lord. Then the priests and the Levites brought the tent of meeting and all the holy vessels that were in the tent. Meanwhile, King Solomon and the whole community of Israel, who were assembled with him before the ark, were sacrificing sheep and oxen in such abundance that they could not be numbered or counted. The priests brought the ark of the Lord's covenant to its place underneath the wings of the cherubim in the shrine of the house in the Holy of Holies. For the cherubim had their wings spread out over the place of the ark, so that the cherubim shielded the ark and its poles from above. The poles projected so that the ends of the poles were visible in the sanctuary in front of the shrine, but they could not be seen outside, and there they remain to this day. There was nothing inside the ark but the 2 tablets of stone which Moses placed there at Horeb, when the Lord made a covenant with the Israelites after the departure from the land of Egypt. When the priests came out of the sanctuary, for the cloud had filled the house of the Lord, and the priests were not able to remain and perform the service because of the cloud, for the presence of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. Then Solomon declared, "The Lord has chosen to abide in a thick cloud. I have now built for you a stately house, a place where you may dwell forever." Then, with the whole congregation of Israel standing, the king faced about and blessed the whole congregation of Israel. He said, "Praised be the Lord, the God of Israel, who has fulfilled with deeds the promise he made to my father David, for he said, 'Ever since I brought my people Israel out of Egypt, I have not chosen a city among all the tribes of Israel for building a house where my name might abide, but I have chosen David to rule my people Israel.' Now my father David had intended to build a house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. But the Lord said to my father David, 'As regards your intention to build a house for my name, you did right to have that intention. However, you shall not build the house yourself. Instead, your son, the issue of your loins, shall build the house for my name.' And the Lord has fulfilled the promise that he made. I have succeeded my father David and have ascended the throne of Israel, as the Lord promised. I have built the house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, and I have set a place there for the ark, containing the covenant which the Lord made with our fathers when he brought them out from the land of Egypt."
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol ha'olamim, tzadik b'chol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer v'oseh, ha'medaber u'mkayim, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek, al ha'torah v'al ha'avodah v'al hanvi'im v'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh, shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu likdusha v'limucha lechavod ultifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umvarchim otach yitbarach shimcha befi kol chai tamid leolam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
So it took the whole book of Exodus for the Israelites as a people to finally believe in God. We read at the end of the verses that I read, talk about how the cloud covered the tent of meeting and the presence of God filled the tabernacle. And Moses couldn't enter the tent of meeting because of that cloud that had settled upon it, and the presence of God filled the tabernacle, the Mishkan. Then when the cloud lifted from the tabernacle, the Israelites would set out on their various journeys, but if the cloud did not lift, they would not set out until such a time as it did lift. For over the Mishkan, the tabernacle, a cloud of God rested by day, and while fire would appear in that cloud by night, in the view of all the house of Israel throughout their journeys. Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. It seems that from the time that Moses was chosen and reluctantly accepted the position to go to Pharaoh and lead the Hebrew slaves out of Egypt to freedom and bring forth the Torah from God to the now emancipated Israelite people. This group of people, referred to as Bnei Yisrael, the children, descendants of Yisrael, who was Jacob, and then eventually Am Yisrael, the nation, or the people of Israel, they had a slow acceptance of embracing this invisible God. Now that we're at the end of the book of Exodus and the tabernacle is finally built, the Israelites are prepared to follow a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day through the wilderness until they reach the promised land. So let's recap some of the examples of how God, and then later Moses, attempted to convey God's presence to the people. Well, we know at first that Moses was reluctant, right? God reveals God's presence to Moses at the burning bush, and Moses has this conversation with God, and Moses was reluctant. We talked about that I know with this group, in being that messenger, that leader. And one of the things Moses says to God is, well, who shall I tell these people sent me? As if, getting the name of God was going to have some authority. And God says, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, I will be that I will be. And that Moses can convey that message to the people. And so Moses does go to Pharaoh. The first time, even before the plagues, we have that example of Moses going with Aaron and challenging the Egyptian magicians, and we have the rod turns into a snake and then swallows all the other magicians' rods turned into snakes, and then we get into the 10 plagues. We often ask the question, for whom were the plagues? And we often think it's for the Egyptians, right? So that God can, and especially Pharaoh, so that God says to Pharaoh, well, Moses, for God, says, let my people go, and as Pharaoh says no, another plague strikes Pharaoh and the Egyptians, putting that pressure. And the plagues were also for the Israelites, the Hebrew slaves, right? How are they going to follow this invisible God unless they too have some kind of signs? Sometimes the plagues are referred to also as signs of God. And then after they've exited Egypt, they come to the Sea of Reeds, and God splits the sea. And that's another physical, visual emanation that can help the people understand that God exists. And then God sends manna to feed the people. God dictates the 10 commandments to give the people, but the people have already been building the golden calf meanwhile. And so God punishes those who made the golden calf with a plague. Moses brings down a second set of 10 commandments on 2 tablets. We then, over the last 5 Torah portions, have seen the details of the building of the tabernacle and all its furnishings and the vestments of the Kohanim. And finally, at the end of this Torah portion, we have the people ready to proceed on their journey with the finished Mishkan in their presence. So even though the Israelites accepted and embraced God at this point, according to the late Professor Nahum Sarna, the pillar of cloud allowed the people to constantly and feel and notice God's presence. Whereas each other time it was like it needed to be an episode to kind of bring them in. This pillar now was an ever-present remembrance or sign or feeling of God's presence. There's a commentary by the name of Eitz Chaim that was published by the Jewish Publication Society in 1999. And in there it talks about 2 types of embodying the holiness in the Israelite camp with 2 things. The tent of meeting, which we didn't read in the last verses, but you may have heard of that reference. The tent of meeting, which is the Ohel Moed, and a second one called the Mishkan, the tabernacle that we've been referring to. And these 2 different entities, embodiments of holiness, as Rabbi Benno Jacob describes, represent two different theologies. So the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting, represents the theology of encounter. And the tabernacle, the Mishkan, is an example of a theology of presence. So what is the difference between encounter and presence in this regard? So when you have something big that happens in your life, maybe it's a wedding or the birth of a child or an escape from danger, that's an encounter where you feel God's presence in this intense big moment. And then on the other side, there's this theology of presence, and that's just feeling God's presence constantly. And that's what the Mishkan is, because the Mishkan is the one that has this pillar that's following it all along. And so the challenge when you have the presence is to recognize that regularly without God becoming too common that it's not as if God exists. So it's sort of that bringing to conscience God's presence. So I thought this was a fascinating way to acknowledge this belief in God, kind of looking at the way the Israelites had these encounters one after another, and they believed in God, and then they didn't believe in God, and they believed in God and embraced God. And now we have God's pillars, and there's an embracing of God's presence constantly. So the two pillars, the one of cloud by day and fire by night, enabled the Israelites to acknowledge, feel, or notice God's presence constantly in their lives. I would ask, is there any symbol or ritual in our lives that makes us feel that way today? And these questions and some of this teaching, I want to thank educator Lisa Lieberman Barzilai, who taught this, and it helps me bring it to you today. A second question is this Eitz Chaim, two types of theologies, the encounter versus the presence, as two different ways of experience God. So why did the Israelites need these two different encounters? And do we as modern Jews experience a theology encounter and a theology of presence? And if so, when and how? So the questions we might share today is there a symbol or ritual in our lives that helps us feel or acknowledge or notice God's presence? And with these two different theologies of encounter or presence, why did the Israelites need both? And how might we today, maybe we have examples in our own lives when we felt that theology encounter or that theology presence? And if you want me to redefine it at any time, let me know, because it can be confusing just hearing it and not necessarily seeing it. So, opening to discussion, wherever the microphone will be, you can pass it along. Okay. Thank you.
I feel like it's the shul.
The shul.
We come in here and in the presence of other people, and even when there's nobody here, when you walk in, you feel a presence. But then you have the Bima, the Torahs. When that opens, it's a different feeling. And I think those are the two that I see. The meeting is the seating that we have here and the people that we have here. And then the ark is part of it. I understand that there's some confusion, though, whether they were part of each other in the Torah, that they may have been in two different locations.
The Moed, the Ohel Moed versus the Mishkan.
Yeah. But then it sounds like the Mishkan was inside the meeting. And that's the way I feel here, that it's a part of, but it doesn't. There's two different reflections.
So
in
being
the
with the
shul.
community and in the shul, and specifically that presence of the Ark and the Torah helps bring that acknowledgement of the presence of God. So I'll go here and then there and there. Okay.
Obviously, we don't open a Torah school every day, only once a week. So I was thinking of it more in my everyday life, besides Shabbos. And I would say tefillin, because I wrap tefillin every day. I would say that's kind of makes me aware of God's presence. Because as Bruce said a few months back when we were talking, so it's you're hugging God. So I thought that was interesting.
And some people think of you're the hugging with the tefillin, but some people have described the talit as an embrace from God as well. Thank you.
I think that's what I was going to say, kind of. Although I don't put on tefillin, that when I pray at home, or see nature, the beauty of nature, that's how I know God is here. Thank you.
So, yes, the ritual of something that is, specifically Jewish, like putting on tefillin, but also nature. It's all around.
Yeah, when I think of the theology of presence, I think of practicing mindfulness, because it's so easy to get. We were talking in Torah Talk today about holiness as being something that is separate it's in a positive way, but it's also sometimes so easy for us to feel too caught up in ourselves and forget that we're a part of everything and everyone around us. So when I hear the frogs in my pond at night, or if I hear the blackbirds in the morning, and I take that moment to pause and to stop thinking about myself and to just be grateful for everything around me. And then with the experience, I think in another way too, sometimes after a trauma, either individual or a collective trauma, we need that feeling of safety or protection, that things are going to be okay. And that's when we have that escape or that end or that feeling that we're going to move on to something better. That's that kind of encounter that carries us to safety.
So the presence is kind of being mindful of the world around you besides just yourself or ourselves. And the encounter can sometimes happen when it's something traumatic, and then connecting with other people and feeling community, and it can also be an individual trauma, and then knowing that it's going to get better. Like there's the expression "Gam ze ya'avor," this too shall pass, right? Thank you. Is there somebody else? Larry.
I think that you mentioned the procedures back then and rituals now. Well, how about the placing of when you, a new home or whatever, or here, when we moved here in '97, we put a mezuzah on the thing to symbolize the completion and the connection with our God and our families.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, mezuzah, because in the Via Hafta, right, we're supposed to have a sign, upon our hand and before our eyes. That's the tefillin. And it shall be a sign on the doorposts of your homes and your gates. And so what is that? And there's also, you shall study them when you're at home and on your way. Well, what's in between when you're in your home and on your way? It's the door, the threshold that you walk through. So on that doorpost, you put the mezuzah up as a reminder of that study. And as I was sharing my words today with you, I was thinking, maybe I should be more mindful of mezuzot. Sometimes they just end up it's just like the furniture, right? It's another part of the house. But they're up, and I could be more mindful. And some people do even observe. They, just like we touch Torah and, bring the words of Torah to our mouth and kiss it, when we walk through with the hakafah of the Torah, we could be doing the same thing, or I could be, when I walk through that that threshold. There's the mezuzah. Mezuzah, it's just not a ritual that I've embraced regularly, only sometimes. I will share with you that when I was in Israel, at the airport, there's this long ramp that you go down as you come to get to baggage claim, and there's a mezuzah that is as tall as I am, that's on the wall, sort of like now you're coming into Israel. And I watched, there were people who were touching it and kissing it, and please take a picture of me under it, and that's that presence, that regular encounter. Other comments? I think it's hard for us to embrace or believe in a God that we cannot see. And I can find examples in my life of those theological encounters and theological presence in which I can acknowledge sensing God. For me, both of these experiences, I think, are revealed most often, though not exclusively, in outdoor spaces, in nature. Like this greater than me, but to look at nature and think about creation, especially when I ascend to heights. Even if climbing up a tall building or getting on a tall building and seeing the landscape, what's man-made and what's not. It's actually a little game I play with myself sometimes when I walk the dog, almost a meditation or a mindfulness practice. I listen to sounds, and I'm like, is that a man-made sound or is that a sound in nature? So those, I think, are presence examples. And another presence example is music. Is music, especially if that music can be in harmony. And Jewish music, though it doesn't have to be. And also nigun for me. And nigun is a wordless melody that just keeps revolving in my head again and again. And somehow through music, in addition to nature, those are two specific examples where I feel like God's presence within me and around me. May God be revealed to us in sight and sounds and through other senses. And may we find, whether through theological encounters and or theological presence, that God is with us today, as God was with our ancestors in the Torah, guiding us throughout all our journeys. Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. And we return the Torah to the Ark at this time. As we're able, we rise and we turn to page 374. You want to take the Torah? Okay. And I will get this. Eitz Chaim hi למחזיקים בה ותומכיה מאושר דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום השיבנו אדוני אליך בנשובה חדש חדש ימינו כקדם. And we continue with Aleinu on page 586 at the bottom of the page.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon ha'kol l'tekulah lioseh reshit shelo asanu k'dayin ha'ratzo v'lo samanu k'mitzvot ha'adama shelo sam k'afenu kohen v'gohor aleinu k'kol hamonam v'anachnu korim u'mishtakavim u'modim לפני מלך מלכי
Our thoughts turn now to those who are no longer with us, and so we turn in our Siddur to pages 599 and 598. I would invite anyone who's joining us through the blessing of technology to write the names of your loved ones lost in the chat at this time. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us and those who died at this season in years past, marking the yard sites of Sydney Albin, Star Berkowitz, Dina Berman, Lena Elner, Ina Feldman, Leah Glogauer Mintz, Arthur Kelly, Ronald Kramer, Ida Lederer, Samuel Longer, Bess Mannheimer, Bella Perlstein, Eugene Salzer, Joseph Samos, George Torres, Debbie Zach, and other names that we should add at this time. And those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. Zichronam Livracha. May their memories be for blessing as we continue on page 598 with Mourner's Kaddish. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach Hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam omei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei dekudasha b'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata damiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'romav huya aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. May be seated. And so I think we are thanking the Grossmans for our Kiddush today. Thank you, although we'll have to thank them when we see them down there. Are there any other Hodaot announcements to share? Do you want to share tomorrow's event, Joe? So tomorrow, Men's Club Brunch, 9 a.m. It's a great way to get to know Jennifer better and hear her story, and I'll add a few things at the end. Other Hodaot, other announcements? Oh, he's leaving tomorrow. Nisiya Tova, I guess you would say, a safe and good journey. And return. Yeah. Tzeitchem b'shalom uvoachem b'shalom. And next week is Purim. So, after we are here in the morning for what's known as Shabbat Zachor, the Sabbath of Remembrance, remembering to blot out the name of he whose name shall not be mentioned. And then at night, Saturday night at 7 o'clock, we'll have our service and spiel. And then Sunday morning, we'll have the Megillah reading. And then followed by a carnival. Requests for closing songs? Shalom Aleichem, which can be found on page 627. I'm guessing the melody is this one. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shabbat Shalom.